Friday, Baylor College of Medicine and Friends of Baylor. Well, you know, there's good news in the medical field. There was a survey done. Who do you trust? And of course, you know, I've been saying over the last 2 weeks that I'm disappointed that we didn't get more people vaccinated against COVID. Well, we're still in the running for trust. So I'm a little disappointed because nurses are more trusted than doctors. I'm not sure how that happened, but we're 5% behind them. But of course, no one trusts the CDC. I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh at that. And of course, no one trusts state and local health officials. I don't know. Hard to get information to people if they don't trust any of the supposedly trusted sources. We're going to start this week with Teffy because it gives the best overview of what's going on, at least in Texas. This is interesting because influenza A has really dropped off, which we expect. It's seasonally. It's about time for it to drop off. But influenza B is rising. That's a surprise to me because there hasn't been much influenza B this whole season. All of a sudden now it's coming on. So I'm not exactly sure, but we'll follow that. Human metapneumovirus is up. That's a pathogen that sometimes gets elderly people. Parvovirus and rotavirus A. So SARS not so much, which is good. And there's been measles detected in Lubbock. You're from Lubbock, aren't you? Okay. Now, I like to show you this as my way of reminding people there's plenty of evidence that vaccination works for measles. What's all that? Okay. Somebody's being beaten with a garbage can in the back. Quiet on the set. Okay. So vaccine was licensed, and you can see in 63, and tremendous decline in cases, but there's little blips with one dose, so they changed the recommendation to 2 doses in 1989, officially declared eliminated from the country. Oh, not so fast. Not if you stop getting vaccinated, apparently. So at this time in Texas, we're up to 327 cases, so we're just leading it all. I mean, we're just leading all the other states. 2 of those were in kids who had received 2 doses. But that's to be expected when you have that many cases. As I said, the vaccine is 97% effective, so and you have 100 cases, you might expect 2 or 3 that would still get it, but the vaccine helps. Nationally, we're up to 378 cases. Tennessee, I was very proud to report its first case. Kansas has 10 measles cases now. So the reluctance to get vaccinated isn't just a Texas thing, it's everywhere. Total of 378 cases, most of them are unvaccinated. 3% have just had 1 MMR dose and 2% 2 MMR doses. So it's really fitting the 97% protective numbers. And you can see we're way ahead of 24. You can see weekly cases in 25. So I have gotten a lot of adults asking me, should I get a measles vaccine? So I thought I'd go over the recommendations. As I mentioned, it's 2 doses of measles vaccine is 97% effective. 1 dose is 93%. So that's for kids. So the way it is, if you're an adult and you have presumptive evidence of immunity, you do not have to get another measles vaccine. So if you had a written documentation that you had a vaccine, your MMR, or you have laboratory evidence of immunity, in other words, they drew your blood and they say, oh, you've got antibodies to measles, or you have a laboratory confirmation of having gotten measles, like one of these cases happens, we now know they have measles. If you're born before 1957, you don't need to because everyone had measles before then. And then the only other issue is between 63 and 68, 1963 and 68, it was an inactivated measles vaccine, which was not as effective. And so most of the time, if you're an adult and you're concerned, you can actually get tested. There are special groups of people that should be considered to be serious about it. Like if you're going to college, you probably ought to know that you have presumptive evidence. In other words, you know that you got your MMR. If you don't know, you can get tested to see if you have antibodies, or you can get a booster. If you're traveling internationally, all of these cases have started with either a child traveling internationally or international folks coming into the country. If you are in the healthcare business, you're taking care of patients, probably ought to make sure that you have presumptive evidence. In other words, you either have antibodies or you know you had the MMR. People with HIV should also be tested. And anyway, those are the main things. So most of the people who have asked me, should I get a measles vaccine, I say, did you get vaccinated? They said, yes, then you don't need it. But again, if you don't know, you can always be tested by your physician. They can check antibodies. So bird flu, about the same, 70 cases nationally, 1 death, as I mentioned, up to 168 million poor chickens, 990 dairy cattle. It's unbelievable. And, you know, I've said about the danger of raw milk. Cats have been infected and died from H5N1 from drinking raw milk. So there was a study, interestingly enough, on raw cheese, raw milk for cheeses. This is a study that came out of Cornell, and the question was, can H5N1 be in cheese over 60 days from raw milk? And they did it 2 ways. They looked at cheese made from infected animals, but also they spiked some of the cheese with H5N1 to see how long. And it turns out it's very much pH dependent. If it's if in an acidic environment, if there's low pH, the virus didn't survive. But if it's not acidic and it's in the cheese, it can survive for up to 60 days. So these days, I'm not sure I'd be eating raw milk cheese. I'd frankly stay away from raw milk, period. I don't know, how many raw milk cheeses are there? I've got that. Okay, next week we'll have an update on raw milk cheeses. Now, I did want to say that I've got a lot of inquiry on aging these days. So there was 2 major papers, one in the Wall Street Journal and one in The Economist, talking about this whole concept of extended life and aging. It's a $55 billion industry. There's a lot of debates, very little science in it. And so you can see them all over the place, supplements for living longer, and there's all these longevity clinics popping up. And there's actually a couple of interesting therapies being developed. There's one company that started giving a particular supplement, but the overwhelming number of Americans actually sort of approve of anything that preserves function, but they're not very happy about things that enhance function. So, and if you look at the world of aging and longevity, there's sort of 2 approaches. One is to prevent aging, but the other is to sort of supplement muscle development, things like that. And there's not a lot of science. So because of that, I might start giving people some science on this because I get so many questions. So this is one of the questions I got. Can you tell us about this blue zone? So blue zones are like, here's 5 communities: Loma Linda, Costa Rica, and Sardinia, Okinawa, Japan, Icaria, Greece. These are places where people generally live beyond the age of 80. The presumption is it's lifestyle factors, physical activity, low stress, whatever. But actually, this is my favorite thing. There was a New York op-ed saying, like, the minute they started actually checking people's birth certificates, the number of people that live that long really weren't documented to be that high. So some of it's soft data, but there is obviously some sense that you can do things environmentally that might make you live longer. But the data are very unclear. And then if you look at the genetic basis, turns out there's some data that shows that family history matters. So if you have a 100-year-old in your family, you're much more likely to live to 100 years. But what's interesting, when we do genetic analysis of centenarians, that is, people who are over the age of 100, there's many genes. There's not a single gene, and there are a bunch of little variants of genes that have to do with inflammation, stress response in cells, cellular repair mechanisms. But they're all very small incremental benefits, so there's not a single longevity gene. So the point is that there's a lot of factors that are important. And so all these things you hear about, take this and you'll live longer, take that, there's very little data. There's actually only one clinical trial that's currently ongoing to look at an intervention that might look at lifelong, prolonging life. Anyway, so I'm going to have a couple of times where we talk about some of the data behind this. And there is a particular person in our faculty who's interested, so I'll have an interview with that person coming up. And of course, Lily wanted me to remind everyone that the Dog Aging Project is clearly going on, and there's a study on brain health in dogs from Cornell looking at canine cognitive dysfunction, CCD, which is very similar to Alzheimer's disease, and they're trying to look at different interventions in dogs that might prevent it. So there may be some benefit to studying dogs. Anyway, more to come on that. I think it's kind of an interesting area. A lot of people are interested in, so I thought I'd give you some information on that down the road. Anyway, I want to end today with a bunch of shout-outs. First of all, congratulations to Dr. Pavan Reddy. He's the director of the Dan L. Duncan Comprehensive Cancer Center. He just was elected to the American Association of the Advancement of Science as a fellow. This is very prestigious, and he's done some groundbreaking. It's been a long day. He's been doing groundbreaking work. He's been doing groundbreaking work on immunologic modulation of graft versus host disease. Anyway, he's a great guy and a wonderful scientist. And special recognition goes to Dr. Marta Fiorotto and Dr. Robert Chulman from the Department of Pediatrics. The American Society of Nutrition has chosen them to be 21 members to be inducted into the Distinguished Fellows group. So congratulations to them. And a special shout out to Dr. Chetan Rao, an associate professor of neurology and neurosurgery at Baylor Center for Space Medicine. He's received a grant from the Spalding Rehabilitation Institute to do research on decoding endotypes and phenotypes that enhance recovery from coma. So very interesting stuff. And lastly, and most importantly, happy 90th birthday to Bob Saveley, one of our loyal viewers. Happy birthday, Bob. Anyway, have a wonderful weekend, and I can't wait to see you next week.